Hey guys, it's Carl, and the most popular selling laptop of the year in terms of Apple's numbers, this is the updated MacBook Air. This is the laptop that everyone wants to see. From my time at WWDC, all the hype was around the midnight MacBook Air. Not only for the brand new colorway, it looked really dope, but of course we have the new design, the M2 chip inside, and we have it here to unbox for the very first time. So if this is technically your first time checking this out, it does come in a couple different colorways. You can see the new design on the box, MacBook Air. And before we get to the actual laptop, I wanted to see the back because the M2 MacBook Pro, the 13-inch that got updated, I gave it a bit of flack for having a reused box. It had a sticker on the back, but there is actually a little sticker on the back of this as well. So maybe the epidemic of used boxes isn't as bad as we thought. Maybe Apple's just trying to reuse old boxes. Maybe they have a ton of these, but there is technically something under this. I see writing on the back. I can't quite peel this off. I'm sure it'll rip. It will. Used box, old box, or bottom of the box on the back. This, though, is new. Laptop is up top. I'm just going to rip off this disposable paper because this is what you want to see. Midnight MacBook Air, and I knew this from WWDC. This one, even though I think it looks the coolest, it's got this brand new color in midnight. We haven't seen a midnight color in aluminum other than the Series 7 Apple Watch. This is not that, that's just blue, but you technically can get that. We do have midnight as a phone color for the iPhone 13. Or like the iPhone SE, which I've got over here, which is actually closer to black. It just has that hint of blue. I think if you didn't really notice, you would think of that as black. But on the MacBook Air, this is noticeably a navy blue, a really dark blue. And because of that, the dark aluminum, it attracts so many fingerprints. You can already see right out of the box, I've collected a ton of smudges up top. So if you are a stickler for keeping your laptop clean, even though it looks so good, you will collect fingerprints on this, sadly. Inside of the box, this is once again something slightly different. So we have designed by California in Apple. It feels so good to say that. I haven't said that in a while. Inside of here, we do have, of course, user manuals, warranty info, and yes, Apple did hook us up with Midnight Apple stickers. So if you're a collector, if you're a fan of Midnight, you might have to grab a MacBook Air. Also inside, we have a couple different options as well. We have a braided cable that matches in midnight. This is their new MagSafe connector. So this color matches to the laptop that you get, and just like on the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros, this now connects via MagSafe. So that can detach quickly, and you have no fear of yanking your computer off the table in case someone walks by that. And as this is the 10-core GPU spec, you have the option of either getting the 35-watt charger, which is the dual USB-C charger, which I think is kind of nice, or if you want a fast charger, which is 67 watt, you have that choice on checkout. If you get the base option, you have to pay $20 for your choice of charger, but it still comes with a base 30 watt, of course, single port USB-C charger. So that is kind of cool. If you want to pick up either of these as a separate or as a backup charger slash cable, $79, I'm speaking Canadian dollars here, or $59. So I'm gonna guess around maybe 40 bucks US, $60 US, which I think is pretty steep for extra accessories. So don't lose these. Keep them safe, keep them secret, keep them safe. And Apple had a little Easter egg on their website. So they are Lord of the Rings fans, which is pretty awesome. That's the box. So fingerprinty laptop, first time taking it on. Of course, as all things Apple, they're super simple. This is auto starting, and we can see that that's now loading. So yeah, here is the new MacBook Air with M2. And what I love about MacBook Airs, not just me, everyone loves the form factor. It's super thin. We've moved away from the previous gen wedge style shape, and it now follows a similar form factor to the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros, which are obviously slightly larger, slightly thicker. And you can see how thin the profile is, which shows that you couldn't actually fit any extra ports, nothing like HDMI. Not that Apple would ever include USB-A. I think that port is, what, 26 years old if we do the fact check. As a fun little fact, Apple went full USB-C in 2017 and has not looked back, but I think they could have got by with putting an SD card slot. It is thin enough, but I will say on my 16-inch MacBook Pro, even Nick's 14-inch MacBook Pro, and I've seen this a ton online, the SD card slot doesn't really work as well as I would want. Maybe 1 in 4 times the card doesn't register. I really have to jam it in, which for a $3,000 to $6,000 laptop, depending how you spec it, I don't think that's acceptable. And I think living the dongle life, which is what we tried to get away from, is something that we still have to do, which is mildly upsetting, but I do think they could have got by with a SD card slot on one side, and on the other, we do have just the good old 3.5mm headphone jack. And for the rest of the design, we've just got the 4 feet on the bottoms, just like the MacBook Pros. Unfortunately, no engraved MacBook Air logo on the bottom. I kind of wish it had that. And for the overall weight, you're looking at 2.7 pounds and 11 millimeters thin. And compared to, say, the iPad Pro, which I've got one just sitting on the floor, these actually have a very similar form factor, and I would liken this to perhaps an iPad Pro and a half in terms of width. And you can actually see here how the iPad Pro almost has the same form factor. It is just slightly smaller, but the exact same width. So moving on to the spec options, and what I think was kind of overshadowed on launch, despite the initial hype, despite the new color, despite how everyone was really excited, the price increase. So this starts base option at $1199. So that's of course USD. That is $200 more than the previous base MacBook Air. So that's around a 20-ish% increase. I know everything's getting more expensive. Inflation, economy is just going haywire, but that's a pretty large increase for the average person. And when you look at some of the tier options, this one specifically, I will label that as the mid-tier spec. It does have the 8-core CPU, 10-core GPU, also a terabyte SSD, 16 gigs of RAM, $1899. But my recommended spec, still taking the 10-core GPU, still getting 16 gigs of RAM, but bumping that down to 512 gigs. So that, I guess my recommended one, which will flash across the screen, will cost you $1699. And I know that's pretty expensive for a MacBook Air, especially when you look at the MacBook Pro, the 14-inch, which starts at just under 2,000 bucks. In terms of the rest of the other actual changes, I did mention the new design, of course, the M2 chip, and I know that the 13-inch MacBook Pro got the new M2, which I dropped a video on. That's the one that you should avoid because it has the older form factor. This has an updated display. So it is technically liquid retina. You don't have ProMotion, you don't have mini LED, but we do finally have reduced bezel sizes. Of course, we do have the notch, which honestly, it doesn't really make the biggest difference in my opinion. This does house though the new updated front-facing camera, which is 1080p. I know that video calls still unfortunately are pretty much the norm depending where you work. We do have a 3-mic array, quad speakers with spatial audio, and the Touch ID button up top, and all of the function keys, as the MacBook Air has never had the touch bar, as I just launched a couple things. And in terms of actual performance, like we do with all the devices that we're testing, we do a bit of movie magic and actually try to edit the video that we're recording on right now. This was able to handle my timeline like a champ. Even at WWDC, this could handle multiple 4K streams. So I think for most people, unless you are technically really a pro user, this should be able to handle most multimedia footage. This is the laptop that I would recommend to probably 98-99% of you that are watching this channel. And even though this does have a fanless design compared to the MacBook Pro, perhaps the performance isn't as sustained, but for example, this video, and I think we still shoot probably better than most people, most average people. We're shooting in 4K, a couple of different streams. Our workflow was able to be crunched by this computer. So if you already haven't made the switch to Apple Silicon, if you're still rocking a device a couple years old, say you're on an older Intel-based chip, there is no better time to upgrade to the new Airs. This is the computer you want if you are spending around that $1,500 mark, you want something in the Apple space, grab the new MacBook Air. Grab it in midnight if you want, but you can already see from our initial testing This thing has collected so many fingerprints. It is so smudgy. That would be my only detraction from the color of midnight. And lastly, to wrap things off, I know that battery life is such a huge component. That's also what makes Apple Silicon so great. So I know that Apple advertises around 18 hours. We get around maybe 16-ish hours on a typical charge. You do, of course, have that fast charge option or the dual USB-C, whichever one you pick. This is the new MacBook Air. Let me know if you want to see any other videos, this compared to any other device. This maybe after some prolonged use. I should take this with me while I'm traveling for the next little bit, so I'll give you my full thoughts then. Hope you guys enjoyed this vid, and I will catch the rest of you in one of my next ones. Peace.